As Polyphony Digital decides what accounts end up staying and what accounts end up getting banned in GT Sport, well, I'll continue playing as I always have. Because realistically, I still have faith in PD that they're only going to ban the people who deserve it. People who did the pit glitch online, people who did the grip glitch over and over without reporting it. And well, I've never done any of those things. I always have tried to stay within the rules to get to where I am now, which is driver rating S, sportsmanship rating S. And even though I may have bent the rules some, depending on people's opinions on that, I haven't truly done anything that the game doesn't allow. So to pretty much start off how I became a Fairweather S driver rank driver, I'll start with just the basic thing. I know it's cliche, but it's true. Just practice. Practice to get as good as you can. Even if you ain't good at that many cars, that many tracks, use the ones that you are really good at, and then just do the best with them. And branch out offline on the ones you ain't as good with to get good there. And then once you are good, use it online, and then that's just more in your wheelhouse or whatever to do, and just do that much better. Do that many more races to go up the higher once you know those tracks. But more specifically, I started Gran Turismo Sport with the closed beta. I was one of the lucky thousands. I don't think the number was exactly announced, but I think it was no more than like 10,000 or something in the world who got into the closed beta. So I got to learn some of the new cars early. I got to learn the new physics early. And most importantly, I got to learn some of the new tracks early. So therefore, that definitely has helped me into the main game. The longer the game's out, the less it's really going to have an effect. But as of now, it's still pretty early in the game's lifespan, so it does help. Like, I remember the first daily race in GT Sport, the main game, that had Dragon Trail, which was actually pretty early on. I pretty much just wiped the floor with whoever was there, so that made an effect too. That immediately shot me out of the gates fast because I think I won, I think it was 5 out of my 6 first races I was in, and I would say 15 out of the first 20. I mean, even now, looking at this is why I'm saying this, because all this sort of kind of ties in. I mean, races completed to wins is still over 50% average. But this goes more into fair weather, because even though I have a really caught pick a good win percentage, not bragging, it actually just, from what I've seen, it actually is. I mean, even drivers like OF Racing and Doodle Monopoly, TRL Doodle, have lower winning percentages than I do. But this goes to the most important part of what I mean by fair weather. I only do the races I'm really caught picking good at. I'm good at the branch hatches. I'm good at Dragon Trail. I'm good at Tokyo Expressway, the one that's more in a circular form and not the one that's like this. Y'all know what I mean. The one that was actually in the closed beta, because that's the one I know. Beyond that, I don't do too many more tracks. I do Big Willow some. That's kind of a risk versus reward track though, so generally I only do it if it's more worth it, like a manufacturer cup race, or I won't if it's a daily race, just because manufacturer cup are like worth more and stuff, bigger field. But though I haven't done anything that's downright illegal, I pushed the game for what it's worth. More in specifics of when I did the tanking thing, that was to get, well, to begin with, get these, and mostly to get the actual game trophies, because you get these way before you get the trophies. And that definitely helped. I got all of those. And by tanking, I pretty much just went from, I think when I started, I was at low, driver rank A. And then I tanked and put it down to a D again. And I think at my lowest, I was driver rank D, sportsmanship rating E. And that was actually the day where I brought my sportsmanship rating from an E to an S in 24 hours. I think I've actually mentioned that before too. Sportsmanship rating's still weird. But yeah, that tanking worked really good. So I was able to shoot up early in the game with a lot of wins, a lot of grand slams, aka win, pole, fastest lap, clean race. And then you get all of those bonuses at once. And then as I did that, and as I started not getting them as much, I just went ahead and tanked. That actually only took 6 races, I think I did straight of purposely messing up, not in anyone's way, I just didn't qualify, so I always started in last. And I just purposely messed up, I purposely wrecked and stuff to lower the sportsmanship rating, and the driver rating I just quit mid-race. They would lower it as much as it could be. That really only took about 6 races to get from a low A to I think it was a high D. And then, well, just the Grand Slams, as I mentioned before, shot up again. So I had probably within the first, or actually I know this because KudosProm.com has the sportsmanship and driver rating tracker where it's actually number instead of a bar. Remember to check that out. Pretty much you just link your GranTurismo.com account, which is pretty much this, but on the computer and not in the game, to the Kudos Prime account, and then you get all of your stats and numbers. I noticed on that, there was actually one point where, even within the first month the game came out, I was already at 50,000 driver rating points. I didn't really realize that back then. I don't think anyone actually did then, because I don't think the Kudos Prime thing was running yet. But once you're at 50,000 driver rating points and you have an S sportsmanship rating, then you also have an S driver rating. I think if it's an A sportsmanship rating and you're at 50,000 points, and it's still A driver rating, but if it's S, it's also S. Those correlate. So pretty much I was already really high up quickly. But actually once I got that high up, it still seemed like people were racing dirty, as kind of been mentioned by a whole heck of a heap of people. So then I tanked again. And then that got me the rest of the way there. Actually, I sort of overdid it. I mean, I don't necessarily regret doing it because it really helped win percentage. But, I mean, this looks really good, even though it's sort of artificial. I mean, it's just not even 300 races done, and I already have 190 wins. So that's not bad. But, again, that is kind of sort of artificial. So pretty much after I did that tanking, I was done. By the time I actually recovered back to A driver rating, S sportsmanship rating, which was the max I've been at that point technically. As I mentioned before, the numbers correlate somewhat with both. You have to have high both. But anyway, once I was back there, I already had about like 110 wins or so I didn't need to tank again because I already had that trophy. That trophy's at 91 wins. So from then on, I raced normally, pretty much. At this point, this was about a month and a half or so into the game, I think. And also, I had that about, I'd say in total, it was about 3 weeks where I couldn't play from PlayStation 4 being messed up and all that. So realistically, I probably only had about 30 days logged in at the point of I was there. And then that was probably early December or so, maybe. And then another thing that helped me actually get to S-Class, which I know this is sort of a me in particular thing. This doesn't necessarily help everyone. But just over December and early January, well, I was on Christmas winter break, whatever y'all want to call it. So I just had more time to play and more time to do the races I was good at and be picking and choosing with those races just because I could do them a lot. That when I'm in college, I can sort of kind of do the pick and choose races. Just generally, I only have time for between 0 and 5 or so races a day. Generally, I don't have more time than that. Actually, more days than not, it's 0. But I can still sort of kind of pick and choose. Just I can't grind on it, so it doesn't make that big of a jump. Over winter break, in a 3-week span, I jumped from, I think it was 44,000 driver rating points to 55. 11,000 point jump at where you're racing against the top drivers in most circumstances. Even now that I'm at 56,000 points, I went from 55 to 56 in 2 weeks now that I'm back in college. It's a slower grind now. I have top drivers majority of the time, but sometimes I actually still do get paired with like mostly B class driver rating drivers. And that does actually still bump up your driver rating a little bit. It depends on a whole heck of a heap of circumstances, but on average, if I'm the only S-Class driver in the race, say that there's 4 A-Class drivers and then the rest are B-Class drivers in a 12-car field, and I win that race, my driver rating actually still goes up by about 80 points. 80 points to 56,000 points ain't that much, but hey, it's an improvement. It's not nothing. That race still does matter. So how I got to become a Fairweather S-Class driver. 1, every race matters. Keep on doing what you need to do to get there, even if that's tanking or not. Just don't cheat at all. That doesn't work in any circumstance. Don't do it. Do it legitimately. If I can do it, anybody can do it pretty much. If you put time into it and all that. But every race matters. Try as hard as you can every race. Even if as hard as you can means purposely trying to do bad. Even if that means wrecking at every circumstance that doesn't slow anyone else down. Even that means backing out at an exact right time where it's like 5 minutes in between races at certain times, depending on the hours and stuff. If you back out after you've done 3.5 minutes of one race, so that way you get your max sportsmanship down, you can wreck for those 3.5 minutes. That gives you just enough time to back out, log into the next race, and then do the same for that one too. So even if you're purposely trying to be terrible, that's still purposely trying. And just, if you do that mindset, every race matters, do what you need to do every race, pretty much you're going to get there. When you are fair weather doing it like me, there isn't as much margin for error in the sense of, let's say Windfire, for example. I'm not 100% sure, but it seems like out of the drivers who have YouTube channels who are really caught and picking good, Windfire seems to do the most races. Windfire has a lower winning percentage than I do, just because he does all of the races that I've seen. Like, no matter what class it is, no matter what day it is, he seems to do a whole heck of a heap of races. Windfire, at times, will actually only finish mid-pack, and even if you get wrecked, back of the pack occasionally. But most of the time will win. I pretty much either get first, second, or third. I don't even think this is over-exaggerating 75% of the time. But realistically, I only do about 25% of the races that are offered, and I don't even do them anywhere close to 25% of the time. I only have a little over 11,000 miles total in the game so far, and I would say maybe, I don't know, 7,500 of those are sport mode related. Either practicing for a race or in a race or something like that. And that's kind of iffy too. There's no way to know actual sport mode miles versus total miles yet. So, fair weathering it like I do, in a way, is kind of harder just because there's less margin for error because you ain't doing all the races, but realistically, if it worked. If I were to do every race that was offered, I really don't think I would be S. I think I would be pretty much what I was in the closed beta. I would be about midpoint of A. It's, I mean, to each their own. Some people would love to have that. Some people would even do it more specifically than I would. It just depends on the person. I'm okay where I'm at because realistically, I'm already about at that 322 race thing where you get that trophy. That trophy is only 30 races away. This is January 2018. I'm already about there, even picking and choosing my races. As of this is literally going to be years away before I get to level 50. I'm not even over-exaggerating. 42 out of 50 doesn't mean over 80% of the way there in any circumstance. The way they do it is each level is so much higher points, so even if I were to do every race, I would say I'd realistically be like level 44 right now. Level 44 is still nowhere close, so. Do I regret not doing every race? Honestly, no, because I did that more in the closed beta, because the closed beta spanned 2/3 of its lifespan was actually over my summer vacation. So I could pick and choose more there, or I could do all the races. And there was about 2 weeks where I did pick and choose to see what would happen, and I did a video on that, and it's pretty much the same results as it is now. If y'all watch that video, that was the video where I did well, pretty much this. It's just SR goes up when you're ahead, and the best way to get ahead is do races that you're really caught picking good at, is then your driver rating goes up too. And then when both of those go up, it makes the later grades go up. So, it's not 100% definitive this is the best way to make your driver rating go up artificially or whatever, but it worked for me. Different people are different, but I assume on average this probably would be the best just because there's few and far in between. Like, I'm in the top 1% in the world in terms of my driver rating. And I'm nowhere close to being able to do every car, every track pretty consistently. At all. Like, if I were to do Nürburgring races, I doubt I would even have a top 5. Seriously, I don't even think I would have one top 5 in sport mode races. I'm terrible there in any car. But if you do happen to be one of those, not even necessarily aliens, just really consistent, who played a lot of the game on all the tracks, then maybe this is not something you should do. But pretty much for anyone that has like favorite tracks, favorite cars or whatever, Fairweather driver rating seems to be the best way to make it go up. How I did it is probably not how a real race car driver would ever do it, because realistically they would be fired when they started tanking and no one would want them again, just because that would be the equivalent of a... It's sort of kind of what Elliott Sadler did, but it's not completely. It would be in a more extreme circumstance. What Elliott Sadler did was pretty much... He was average at best for... Back then it was, I think, Nextel. Now it's Monster. And then he went down to, back then it was Bus Series, now it's Xfinity. So he could be better. And now he's a good Xfinity driver. But if somebody were to do that completely on purpose and not of their own, not of everyone's agreement or whatever, they would get fired. So this isn't the most realistic, but the game allows it. I don't think they would ever have a point of where they don't allow it. So it works. Just pick and choose races. Do what you're good at. And eventually you'll get there. Obviously every person is different, but this seems to relieve stress the best, because generally you're ahead of all the drivers who would try to wreck and all that. And generally you look, quote unquote, better when you do the races like that too. For people who know the top drivers, not really. But if you go into a race and you're top 5 in the leaderboards, even if it's just one race, that might be the only race where you're in the top 5 in the leaderboards for that week, and you have a SS rating, they're going to think you're a super ultra mega alien, even if you really ain't, aka I really ain't. So yeah, there's that bit too, but mostly it's just, there's not as much stress, because generally you're not as in big packs, and it's just overall, it improves way more than it lowers. So I hope y'all enjoyed this, learned something from this. Use this for yourselves if you want, because realistically, if you want to get those trophies, you kind of have to do the tanking thing, which sort of ties into the Fairweather thing as well, because it makes your wins go up relative to your races ran, percentage-wise. So, Yeah, it's not the most legit. It's not the most realistic, but hey, it's allowed. And as I said at the beginning of the video, it's kind of iffy on what's allowed and what's not. But as far as I know, this is gonna stay allowed because it's kind of. I don't know how they could ever truly say it's not allowed. So in that sense, it's most definitely worth a yeehaw.